Hi, everyone. Well, I don't know if anyone is with us, but if you're watching live, please let me know where you're tuning in from. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Well, actually, we'll get started whenever some questions come in. My name is Verónica, or V, and I am an admissions expert with Magoosh. And today we're going to be answering any questions that any live streamers might have. So we've noticed that usually people who attend our webinars have a lot of individual and personal questions about applications, and so we just want to answer those directly. So hopefully we'll get some people joining, but I'm just going to give it a few minutes. Usually takes a little while for people to trickle in. I do have a couple questions on Discord, which I'm pulling up right now. Just a few things that were circulating in the conversation this morning. So if you are watching or if you're tuning in, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. And usually takes a little while for people to join, but I'm hopeful that we'll get plenty of questions. Yay, I'm so happy you didn't miss the live stream too. And I'm just waiting for folks to drop a couple questions, or I can start with some general information and get started and get people's ideas moving. All right, we got our first question here. And if you're tuning in now, my name is V. I am an admissions expert with Magoosh, and I'm also a PhD student at the University of California at Santa Barbara in the humanities. So it's for me, it's like a 6 to 7 year program, and I'm in my 4th year. But let's get to this question. If I early to universities within the early action deadline, will my chances of getting accepted increase? Okay, so I'm assuming that this question, if I apply early, is about rolling admissions. So for some programs, they do have that application date, but you can submit after that date. So what that basically means is that is when they're starting to look at applicants, right? So say you submit on that day, you will be one of the first applicants that they look at. And if you're what they're looking for, then they might go ahead and select you then. If you apply later, maybe a month or two later, a few weeks later, there is a possibility that they could have already found the cohort that they're looking for. And now they're comparing your application to, say, a group of students that they have already decided on. That's not the most ideal scenario. You want to apply as early as you can to make sure that you're within that first pool of students that they're looking at. That does increase your chances. But it doesn't mean that if you apply after that rolling admissions date that you won't get accepted. It definitely doesn't mean that, because otherwise they wouldn't make it a rolling admissions. But typically students who know exactly which program is their most ideal, that is the one that they'll submit early. And then those other programs that perhaps they're still thinking about, they're still researching on, they might submit that later, just as like a backup, which I definitely recommend to do, is to have a backup school, backup programs that you are interested in going into, but perhaps are not your top priority. That's always a good strategy, and I recommend it. Yay, Natalie, thank you for being here. Oh, great. I'm so grateful that we're helpful to you. So if that answered your question, let me know. But if you have a follow-up question as far as rolling admissions, feel free to drop that in the chat too. All right. Will taking the GR exam more than once impact admissions in any way? So I'm not certain what you mean by that. Perhaps you mean if the program will look at your GRE, your first GRE score and your second one. That isn't always transparent. So we don't always know, especially if you did send that score, we don't always know if programs will be looking at both scores. Usually they don't. Usually they look at the last one that you submitted, the most recent one, just because they don't necessarily have the time to look at every GRE you've ever taken. But I would say that if you have the chance to take the GRE twice because you'd like to improve your score, you'd like to see what the exam is actually like, I recommend doing it if you can, if you have the time, and not submitting that first score and submitting the second one. If you can, that's very ideal. Not everyone has the time to do that, and that's okay. Just make sure that you prepare as best as you can for that GRE score, the one that you will be submitting. But if your question is, if taking the GRE multiple times impacts admissions, it does not. But if you do have those very specific questions and you're concerned about that, just go ahead and contact the department, the actual department that you're applying to, and ask to speak to the grad admissions advisor, or the graduate advisor, basically, because I don't know what program you're applying to, and say that they expect a really high math score, let's just say, and they're going to look at every math score you've ever gotten. That's a possibility. That could be a part of their strategy. I don't know, and only that department will know. So I recommend you contact them, but usually rule of thumb, taking the GRE multiple times is not going to hinder your chances, as long as, the ideal score, the one that you want that university to see, is the last one that you send in and is the one that they will be receiving by the deadline. I hope that answers your question. All right. Do you think virtual internships hold a value? I don't have any work experience, and most of my colleges doesn't require GRE. How do I strengthen my profile? This is a really great question. So if you can, for the person that asked this question, if you could follow up with what kind of program you're applying to, that would help. But for example, technical programs, they typically do want work experience, something that indicates that you've worked in the industry before, that you are committed to it, and it's confirmed for you that is what you want to do, and that you have some kind of experience with it. But that's not the case for research PhDs. It's not expected for you to have extensive research or work in research, because that is what the training will be in the PhD. So as far as if a virtual, okay, and then they followed up and said they will apply for an MS in data science. Okay, so as far as virtual internships, I definitely think that they can hold value, especially if you can have a letter of reference from that internship, especially if you can indicate what skills you gained from that internship that you will apply to the program, because that's really what internships are for. They're to provide experience, training, exposure. So if you can indicate that you gained that from the internship, and describe that in your essays, your statement of purpose, or your personal statement, whatever that is, then absolutely it will have value. So they don't require the GRE. So another way to strengthen your profile is to, one, have a really strong admissions essay. So that might be the personal statement, that might be an open-ended question that they ask you. They might provide a prompt for you. Usually every program is different, but you really want to focus on that essay. So the GRE is not something that you're going to rely on to demonstrate how prepared you are. Essentially, the essays are your current degrees and your letters of recommendation. So to strengthen those three, you want them to work together. You want your letters of recommendation to work with your essays. So what you're describing and the way that you're presenting yourself in your essays, it would be really, really great if your letter writers can also speak to that too. So let's say you're describing your interest, your passion for data science and your introduction to it, your experience with it. If you have a letter writer that can speak to those experiences too, then it creates a more thorough application. It demonstrates that the people who are speaking to your abilities are aware of where you are in your experiences and what type of experiences prepare you for the program. So you basically want to create coherence among the essay, the letters of recommendation, and whatever other written material you're submitting. Some schools do ask for an example essay, example work, or sometimes they'll have an open-ended question that says, what else would you like us to know about you? Do not overlook that question. Definitely put in time and effort into it, because that's going to give them the information that they need. So I hope that answers your question. If you have follow-up about that, please drop it in our chat below, okay? I will just say too, if you don't have work experience, but you know specifically why you're going to this program, what you want to study, and what you will do after, that does demonstrate preparedness for the program. That perhaps if you had work experience, but you didn't necessarily know why you're applying to an MS now, or what you will do with that MS after, you know, it can kind of outweigh work experience without like a strong direction and intention of where you're going. So I hope that helps in that situation. All right. Ooh, we're getting good questions here. I'm excited about that. Thank you all for joining. All right. If I get an early acceptance during rolling admissions, but then realize you need to keep searching for a better fit, do you think hold that seat just in case, or release and move on? This is a great question. So this depends on the institution. So it kind of works differently for every program. Some programs, if you give them a yes and then you retract that, there could be issues. They could even charge you. So it depends on the program. I would say to keep the seat if you can. I know students who have done that before. They've applied to like a state school that they were like, I could go there, but I'm waiting to hear back from this UC that I've been put on the wait list for. And so you keep that seat until you get a response from the wait list. I've even seen students kind of, what's the word, when you have not been accepted and you want to basically ask like why. I'm forgetting that actual word, but there is a way to do that. So I would definitely hold the seat and keep searching for a better fit, whatever that is for you. And, you know, it depends what program you're applying to, Natalie. If it's a PhD, some students do take on the PhD that they have been accepted to, and they will get their master's there, and then they will transfer once they've done their master's degree into another program, or they will transfer right before they go ABD, which means all but dissertation, into their dream school. You know, I know 2 students who have done that into our program, the program I'm in. So that might even mean starting that program if you want to and you're determined to start, you know, graduate school now, especially if it's a PhD and you hope to transfer. That does happen, but always confirm with the program that you have been admitted into. If you already confirm that you will accept the offer, just confirm, and usually they'll tell you, they'll be very explicit about what would happen if you did not end up attending. Because, you know, for them too, they're holding that seat for you. And if you don't take it, another student could have. So you do want to make sure that you are very communicative about what would happen if you decide not to attend. And especially if they might charge you or something like that, you definitely want to confirm with them. I know for me, like I said, I'm at the University of California. If I was not to attend, I would have been charged. And I'm not certain how much it would be. Maybe it would be worth it, but just confirm with that program. I hope that was helpful, Natalie. Okay, so hello, Verónica. Hello. I'm applying to MSBA program in USA for fall 23 with a GRE of 315 and work experience of 3 years. However, I do not have any hands-on experience in any business intelligence tools or professional languages or prog languages. Although I have a couple of certs in BA from LinkedIn, Udemy, so how is it going to affect my application of the course I'm looking to pursue? Okay, so this is something I cannot answer as a matter of fact because so many factors working as far as if you will be admitted or not. But let's see. So your GRE, is that above the minimum score? That's really the question. The score is not as relevant as what that minimum score is. If you're above it or if you're in the competitive pool, then that's great. But I don't have that memorized off the top of my head of what MSBA programs require. But so just know that. And you have work experience of 3 years. But you do not have any experience in business intelligence or programming languages. Okay. But you do have certifications in BA from LinkedIn and Udemy. Okay. Well, that depends on the program requirements. If that program requires that you have work experience in business intelligence and I think programming languages is what you mean. If those are the requirements and you do not fulfill them, then I will say that that impacts your chances of being accepted. Now, if they are not explicit about that being the requirement, then it's like, it's free game, you know, and it's up to you to demonstrate to the admissions committee that you are prepared. So the way that you will do that is through your essays. And I wouldn't recommend saying, I don't have any hands-on experience and I don't have, experience in these programming languages. Don't just flat out say that. They'll probably be able to see that based on your application. But what you will say is, I do have experience in this. This is what my undergraduate degree was like, and this is what I learned, and this is what I want to apply to the BA. This is what I have learned and gathered in my 3 years of experience that confirms for me that this is the program that I want to be a part of, and this is the time. I'm prepared now. This is the year that I'm applying, and this is what I intend to do after. Usually these programs, they want to know, well, what will you do with the degree after? Why this degree? Why do you need it now? Why are you committed? Because they want to know that you're going to finish the degree, that you're a student who's going to come, intends to be there, intends to get the most out of it, and intends to apply that degree in the selected industry, because that also validates them as a program, as a department. When they have students who go on and utilize that degree, that validates them as a viable and competitive program, and that's what they desire to be. That's why they're there. So I would say that as far as how does it affect your application, just to summarize, if that's the requirement and they indicate that on the application website, then it will affect your application. But if that's not the requirement and you do meet those requirements, then I would say you're a strong applicant, as long as you can demonstrate why you're prepared, why you're applying now, what your interest is in the program, and what you will do after. If you can articulate that well and you have a competitive GRE and GPA, then I'd say you're a very strong applicant, and you don't necessarily need to worry about not having that hands-on experience directly or not having experience in programming languages, because I assume that that will be a part of your training. But again, I don't know entirely, so it always depends on what the requirements of that program are. I hope that was helpful. That was a little long-winded. Okay. All right, moving through. Okay. Does an exceptionally good GRE score compensate for a low GPA? This again is on a case-by-case basis. So it depends on how low your GPA is. If you had one semester where you kind of tanked it, or if all 4 years you were just kind of scraping by. That does impact. And then it depends on how good your GRE score is and how much that department weighs in the GRE score. So for instance, just as an example, for me, my GRE, the math aspect was my department didn't even look at it. So if I would have had a great math score, it wouldn't have really mattered because that's not relevant to my research. So if your GRE score is relevant to your research, as in that demonstrates that you are prepared to apply that and grow and expand from that point in graduate school, then the GRE score does matter. And how exceptionally good, like how much above you are for the requirement is definitely a good thing, especially if you're really competitive, you know, if you're in the top like 10 percentile. Now, the low GPA though, it depends on if those were courses that are prerequisites for your degree. So let's say you're going into like geography, let's just say, and in the prerequisites for that, you weren't doing so well, that could pose an issue or pose a problem. So it really depends on what is the low GPA, which semester was it, and which courses were they? Did you retake those courses and did that, you know, benefit your GPA? Was it your freshman year where you were not doing so great? That happens. Usually schools are not going to look so strictly at your freshman, even maybe your sophomore year. They're going to look more at the courses that are relevant to the degree that you're pursuing. But again, I would contact the program and I would say, hey, you asked to speak to the graduate advisor and let them know, like, this is my GPA right now. This is my GRE score right now. My GPA is, you know, the low score is mainly reflective of this one semester or my freshman year or my sophomore year, and let them know the situation. I will say that the low GPA, if it's particularly in the prerequisites or the field and area that you will be studying, that can pose a problem. But in your essays, you can elaborate on that, particularly if the GPA is very low and, you know, it's like the whole undergraduate degree that you just weren't really doing so well in, you will need to address it. If it's the prerequisites that you didn't do so great in and they are directly related to what you will be studying, then I do recommend addressing it. If your GPA is just, it's not great, but it's not that low, you know, it's like average, I probably wouldn't even address it. I would just address what it is that has prepared you for graduate school now. What are those experiences? How do you know you're ready to pursue this degree? What type of research are you interested in? Because I think that graduate schools do know that, you know, undergraduate is kind of different. And sometimes students don't know what they're studying or why they're studying. And it's after that students realize, oh, wow, I really want to pursue this. And the GRE score is indicative that you are studious, that you do know your stuff, you know, if they weigh in the GRE. So that really depends on where the GPA is low and which courses it's low in. Maybe you can provide some follow-up information on that, like where the GPA is low, what you're applying to, and if you have low marks in those prerequisites or things that are directly related to your field. Because if you have like low grades on like extracurriculars that are just not even relevant to your degree now or what you'll be studying now, or, you know, it was courses that you retook and you got those things, they do matter. So all of that is very specific to your profile, but if you can provide that information, I can go deeper into that too. All right. Are letters of recommendation from the university research professors better than work letters? This is a good question. It depends on the program that you're applying to. So, sorry. It depends on the program that you're applying to. If you're applying to a PhD at a Research 1 institution, which means like an R1, which means that, you know, research is really important for professors there, and that's basically what you're being trained to do, then yes, letters from faculty and other research professors weigh in a lot more than work letters. In fact, I think for some PhDs, and for some R1 universities, they don't even accept letters from work. But again, you'll know that based on the program. So you want to you want to get down to the specifics of what the requirements are for that program. And if they do say letters from faculty, letters from professors you've worked with, then you know that they're not even accepting letters from work. Now, if they do say like, oh, any letters of recommendation from people you have worked with at the university or outside, then you know that they are accepting them and they do want to see. So it depends on the program you're applying to. If it's an R1 university and you're working with, and it's going to be a PhD, and it depends on the requirements for that program. If they're open, if they say like, we accept letters from anyone, then there isn't a hierarchy and you don't really need to worry about it. They just want to know, they just want a recommendation letter from someone you've worked with. Now, if they do indicate that they expect it to be professors, then I don't recommend submitting letters from people you've worked with unless you've spoken to the graduate advisor and they give you a go ahead and they say, we've admitted other students who have done that as well. So always get a confirmation from them if you can. Okay, I'm in the middle of drafting my SOP. Can you please provide some tips, suggestions, and also please mention any mistakes which we should avoid? Yes, this is a great question. We're talking about the SOPs. Okay, so for anyone listening, the SOP is your statement of purpose. And the statement of purpose is basically supposed to describe in detail why you're applying. And it's not just, hang on, someone's at my door. Let me just let them know. Okay. And it's not just, oh, I want to go to Harvard because Harvard is a great school and Harvard is an Ivy League and it would be so great to go to Harvard because there's so many great minds there. Yes, they know that. But they want to know why history of science. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. Okay, so they want to know why the program, why history of science, why sociology, who in the faculty do you want to work with in that program? Why? What type of research do you want to produce? What is the purpose of you going now? Are you prepared now? Have you been, reading some books and some articles that have really confirmed for you that this is the research you want to study and that you want to produce in that field? Do you get what I'm saying? So as far as mistakes to avoid, avoid being overly general. Avoid just saying, oh, Stanford is a really great school and I would love to be there and there are really great minds there. Yes, we know that. Or, the Bay Area is a great place and that's why I really want to go to Berkeley. That's a little bit just too general and not specific enough to why you are applying to the program you're applying to now and what you intend to do. So that basically goes hand in hand with being specific. Try to get as specific as you can to the faculty that you hope to work with, the research that you hope to do there. What is it about this program that makes you want to apply now and commit to, if it's a master's degree, to 4 to 7 years of your life, if it's a PhD, to this process now? So get as specific as you can and don't, I think a lot of the essays that I read, they tend to be a little bit just kind of general. I think students hesitate to just get down to the specific of who they are, why they're applying, and what they intend to do. But that really helps you stand out. But just do remember that the statement of purpose is not the personal statement. The personal statement will get down a little bit more to who you are and what you've done and why you're applying now. But the statement of purpose is more technical. So you are going to get into what it is that you plan to work on, why this program, who you would like to work with, if there's faculty there that you're interested in, and what type of research you hope to contribute to. So that means doing your research to know the programs that you're applying to and to know basically why you're even applying and why you're a good fit and why they're a good fit for you. I think it's kind of hard when we're applying to think about what that university offers us because the application process makes it feel like all you should be considering is what you offer this institution and this program. But it's important that you're able to reflect on what they offer you. If they offer the training that you need, the resources that you need, the exposure that you need, the courses, the faculty, all of that, because ultimately that is a huge reason why students are able to complete their degree or not. And it can happen that you get into your dream program and you realize, like, wow, the faculty here, we do not share research interests. That's a problem. And so the review committee wants to know why it is that, what's the purpose in you applying and receiving this degree? What would you do with the degree afterwards? You don't need to be very specific if you don't entirely know, but if you do have an idea of what you would do with it, that's it's a great place to indicate that and to mention that. But as far as the biggest mistake to avoid is not doing your research. You need to do your research on why you're applying and what the purpose is, what the program offers, what is distinct and unique about that program, not the university as much, but the actual program that you'll be in and the people, the real people that you'll be working with. I hope that answers the question. I know that's a hard one. Statement of purpose can be challenging, but if you've done your research and you figured out why you're applying and why you're applying now and who you want to work with and why, then the statement of purpose can be quite, it can come out naturally because you already know. Oh, how best to know if you have good chances of getting into a certain college or not? That's a hard one because sometimes you can really meet all of those requirements that they're asking for and still not get accepted because of so many different factors. Like the faculty member you want to work with won't be there for the duration of your PhD, or they're looking for particular research interest, and although your research interest is great, that's just not the area that they're looking to grow in. So I don't say that to scare anyone or to discourage anyone from applying, but it's just to say that there are so many external factors that affect your chances of getting accepted, and it's usually not even a personal thing. It's not even that you're not capable or a reflection of you as a student. It's just the way that program is moving, as in research and funding that is available and the applicants that they got that year. So there is no sure way to know if you will get into a college or not. It's kind of all based on the information that you can gather, and then the chances, the way things line up based on who applies and the faculty that plan to be there and will be there when you're, actually going through the program. So, but the best way to gauge if you have a good chance is to look at the requirements and see if you meet them. If you meet them and you also meet the areas where they say it would be nice if you had experience in this or that, if you meet all of that, then you have a pretty good chance. If you're not meeting every single requirement, but you're meeting the major ones, I'd still say you have a pretty good chance. For PhDs, particularly in STEM, if you will be doing lab work, if you have contacted a lab director and you get a confirmation from them, then that's a pretty good chance to know that you have a strong chance to get in. So all of those things matter, but there is no certain way to know, unfortunately. But if you meet the requirements and you have spoken to some faculties, particularly in STEM, and they have indicated that they are looking for people with the research you're interested in doing, all of those things, and that they have accepted students, with or below the the GRE, the GPA that you're applying with, for example, then that you have a pretty good chance. But even if you meet every single requirement and you're a strong applicant, there's still a chance that you could not get in, and it could be due to external factors that have nothing to really do with you as a student or your your capacity to contribute to knowledge production or to be an academic or to get an MA or an MBA. So a lot of these things can be outside of you, but the best that we can do is just look at those program requirements and see if we meet them. I am kind of late with everything. It's likely that my application making process is going to be a bit rushed. What common mistakes have you seen students make and how can I avoid them? This is a good question. Okay, so I think the major mistake students make is they fill out their application to just a few hours or even just a day before the deadline and underestimate how long the application will take. I'm talking about the actual application that you do, not the materials you submit. So I would make sure to fill out that application, the online application, which is just like all your information and submitting your, uploading your CV, uploading your resume, answering those short questions if they have any. I would make sure to do that with plenty of time in advance. Do not leave that for the last day, the last couple hours. You could really end up underestimating how much time it takes. I think letters of recommendation play a pretty big role, and it can be a little daunting or overwhelming to ask for them. So my biggest recommendation is don't leave that to the last minute. If you know that you're starting a little late, give priority to those letters because they go a really long way. And next is those essays. I mean, if you're rushed, it might be hard to get someone to review the essay, but that can go a really long way too, especially people who know you. I know I've read the essays of friends of mine who have applied, and I know them really well. And I'm like, you didn't even mention all this stuff that you did. Because it's hard to talk about ourselves. So if you can have someone read your essay and just kind of let you know, you left out this, or you're not very specific, you're a little vague here, that can go a really long way. So if you're rushed, my top tips are do not leave the application, the actual digital application on the website for the last minute. Do that as soon as you can. Don't underestimate if there are extra questions in there or things, formatting. Let's say they want everything in a PDF, so you need to change your documents, or they want everything in a Word doc and you don't have Word downloaded on your laptop. These are things that can cause some delays. So definitely don't underestimate that, and then seek out those letter writers as soon as possible. And try to get someone to review your essay, even if it's just a friend, someone who can tell you, it makes sense, you're being specific enough, you're speaking about the things that you mentioned on your CV, so you need an extra pair of eyes on your essays if you can afford it time wise. And other than that, just giving it as much time as you can, because certain things take a little longer than we expect. But I've seen people submit with literally 2 months and they make it. So if that's what you have, there's still a strong possibility, even if you have less than that. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Only you know what you're capable of doing. Okay. I'm applying for MA programs, some of which are GRE optional. Are the essays, grades from undergrad, letters of recommendation are more important than my GRE grade? Okay. Okay, well, if you're applying for MAs and only some of the programs the GRE is optional for, but you'll be submitting the GRE anyways, you'll be taking it for other programs, I recommend submitting it, because if they will be looking at it and you have a strong score, that only benefits you. So if you're going to be submitting it anyways, if you're going to be taking it anyways, I would just go ahead and submit it to the other programs that indicate that it's optional. If they specify that they will not even look at it, then you don't need to send it because they're not even going to look at it. But if it's optional and you're already taking it for other programs, meaning you're already preparing and intending to get the best score possible, I would submit it to every school that says that it's optional. And yes, if these programs indicate that the GRE is optional, then everything else, essays, undergraduate transcripts, letters of rec, they are more important than the GRE, 100%. I think a lot of students tend to think that the GRE is everything. And maybe it feels that way because it's a standard exam. And so we just feel like that's really big. But letters of recommendation, your essays are huge. They're very, very big because that's how they're going to get to know you. That's their first impression of you, your experiences, what people have to say about you, what you intend to do. So I would definitely give that very, very big importance for all programs. And then for the ones that are optional, basically submit it knowing that they're going to glance at them, but that's not going to be the deciding factor for you getting it. Okay. Can I append an unofficial WES evaluation to my transcript? Oh, okay. So they require an evaluation. I'm assuming you're an international student. I don't know. I don't want to give you a concrete answer because this depends on the program. I would contact the program and let them know. And typically with unofficial transcripts, they will accept things like this. And then if and when you're accepted, they will ask you for the official version. So just make sure that the person, if they do say yes, just make sure that the unofficial evaluator is going, like it's legitimate in the sense that you will not be submitting something different once it is that they ask for the official one, once you've been admitted. Because if they see that you have hidden information, like maybe you didn't disclose a grade that you got in this class, even if you retook it, anything that they feel that you hid from them can definitely impact you negatively. So contact the program, ask them about this, let them know the whole situation, being an international student, that this is an unofficial but legitimate source, all of those things. Provide them all the information that they need to make their decision, be very specific and detailed, and then see what they say. I know that's annoying. I think that's what you mean when people evaluate your transcript for international students. I had to do that when I studied abroad. So let me know if that's not what you mean, and provide more information about that question. Okay. This is a great question. What sort of material should I be sending to my letter writers? It is important for them to know details about every program I'm applying to. Yes. So this is tricky. It really is. It gets easier though once you're in graduate school. So if you're asking for a letter of recommendation from people you've worked with, do not assume that they just know off the dome, off the top of their head, what to say. Because if they're a professor, it's likely that they have many students that they're working with, and there's no way that they're going to remember all of that. So for your letter writers, things to send to them are where you're applying, what the program is, when the letter is due, and how to submit it. So that might be like a link, that might be, however else that school is accepting it. When it comes to the deadline for the letter, I personally give them the date that's one day before. That's what I do. Sometimes I'll tell them the letter is due December 6th, but can you please submit December 5th? I'm asking my letter writers to submit December 5th, or just tell them it's due December 5th. So where you're applying, the program, the date of submission for that letter, and where and how to submit. Make it as easy as possible for them. And then as far as information about you might just be able to send them a CV that has, basically everything that you will be elaborating on in your statement of purpose or your personal statement. And then you can send them your a little 2, 3, you can create basically like a template that you'll send to every letter writer, which will say things like what you plan to study, what type of research you're interested in, maybe like a 2 to 3 paragraph description of that and why you're applying to this program. And then that's about it. Oh, you can also tell them, you can also tell them anything you would love for them to elaborate on. So let's say you're writing, you're asking someone who you've taken, a lab, you've done like a lab seminar with them. And you're like, if you could elaborate on my final project, and, the work that we did together for that would be great because I'm still following that research in my PhD. That's an example, right? So again, just to recap, where you're applying, the programs you'll be applying to. Let's say you're applying to 3 programs and the fields are different. just indicate that, give them a title, let them know UCLA is going to be history, UC Santa Barbara is going to be sociology, and UC Davis is going to be, global studies. You need to let them know all of that so that they can change that for the letter. And then the date and where to submit. So provide that link, make it as easy as possible for them. And then give them something to reference, whether it's your CV, which should at the top say like what your research interests are and research experience that you have. That should be enough. But if you would like to follow up with a description of your research interests and what it is you plan to do at each program, that would be great. All of this should happen after you ask if they can write a strong letter for you and if they're willing to, and they confirm. So just to be clear, you should not send them all of this prior to their confirmation. So make sure you get a confirmation that they're interested prior to sending the information. And yes, it is important for them to know details about every program you're applying to. You want to make it as easy as possible for them. Even if you spoke over the phone and you told them everything and they're like, okay, I got it. You still want to provide a written version of that information to make it accessible for them. Does age matter in doing PhD in electrical engineering STEM? I am 37 right now. I have academic experience of around 10 years, mostly teaching undergraduates and guiding in their projects. I don't know if there is like an age cap, like an age where they cap it off and they're like, we don't accept PhDs at this age anymore. But to my knowledge, age does not play a role. Like 37 is great. I think 37 is a great time to start. You'll be in your 40s by the time you're done, and like you'll be ready to go. You'll be ready to start a new career. So I wouldn't, you shouldn't hesitate about that age. If you have experience, which it seems that you do, and you can demonstrate that you're ready for the PhD, that's great. If anything, it might indicate that you're more certain and more grounded in why you want to do it and that you're ready to complete it. So no, age does not play a role. Being prepared for the program and meeting the requirements is really all you have to worry about. And I would definitely go into what those 10 years of academic experience have provided for you as far as, why it is that you're ready to make this career change now. So this is great, especially if you want to be a professor. This is great because you already have so much teaching experience, and you can talk about your pedagogy. You can talk about helping students, complete their research projects and how this has inspired you to go on and do this now. I think this is great. I would not consider this as a negative at all. So I hope that's confirming. Does a letter of recommendation from an alumnus make a big difference? I would say that typically things like this, like being an alumni or being from a professor who's, kind of a big name, they do play a role. Like they do, we call it like name dropping, like, oh, I got a letter from Howie Winot. I don't know. He's just an example. He's a great professor who recently retired. But anyways, does that really matter? It doesn't matter as much as the content of the letter. If that letter writer who happens to be an alumni can write you a great letter, that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, they're not really looking at that name and the signature, they're looking at the content. So if the content is great and that person happens to be an alumni, then that does look pretty good. But if the content is not great, as in they can't speak to you, the requirement was 2 pages, they submitted half a page, then them being an alumni doesn't play much of a role. So I would be concerned more with the content of the letter. Okay, I think this is a follow-up from the other question, but I think that's been answered. Okay, great. Okay, Luis, when it comes to letters of recommendation, should one emphasize letters from teachers? Sorry, it depends on the program. It does. If they indicate that they accept them from your workplace and teachers, research, then you know that. But it depends on what they're looking for. If they say that they only want letters from previous research experience professors and whatnot, and you submit from your workplace, it's possible that they might not even look at it and they might consider it as not a submission, or they would consider it as your inability to follow through on directions, which doesn't look good either. So it depends on the program. Double check with them. If they're vague on the website, call them and ask them and tell them your exact situation and if they'll accept those letters. Yeah, every program's different. I wish I could provide like a universal like rule book, but every single program is different, and sometimes they're changing too. But typically, rule of thumb is if you're applying for a PhD, they're looking for letters of rec from professors. Sometimes there's, they say like, oh, if you've been out of school like 5 years or more and you have work experience, that will suffice. So contact them, ask to speak to a real person, the graduate advisor, and let them know and get a confirmation from them. And then do your very best. Let's say they say, oh no, we only accept from teachers, and you realistically can only get 1 or 2, but you can get like 3 from work experience. Let them know that. Don't be afraid to ask and just say, this is my situation. Would this work? Is this possible? And they might say, you know what, like given that, it could work, just do your very best. We have accepted students before who submitted letters from workplace, but we prefer professors, right? So you want to get the most up-to-date answer from someone who is inside the program. And if someone tells you, I don't know, keep asking, if you call the admissions office and they say, actually, I don't know about that department, try to get straight to the department and speak to the graduate advisor, friendly, and just let them know I'm an interested applicant. This is my situation. What do you recommend? And if they say, I'll get back to you, then, just wait and hang on for that and follow up if they don't get back to you. Because people get busy and people forget. So great question, Natalie. How do you stay patient and grounded in the process, even thankful for the uncertainty and fluctuating circumstances? There's so much to take in and discern. There is, and then there's so much after you're accepted. It doesn't go away, I remember thinking the application was just like the hardest part, but it's actually not. It's a piece of cake once you get into graduate school. But the good thing is you start to get better at all of this. Applying, writing, seeking letters of rec, working with different people, staying in communication, even you just get better at describing your own research. It all gets easier. I would say, as far as the application process, if I could go back and give myself advice to stay grounded, I would have reminded myself that what you have to contribute is really valuable. And the right school and the right program will see that in you. And you won't have to like hide, what your research interests are. You won't have to, change your research interests for the right program. It's going to be a good fit. And I know that because I feel like I have a good fit now. And I didn't even know that this was available while I was applying. I think my mindset was more like, if they take me, I'll be so grateful. But looking back now, and I know we always have like 2020 hindsight vision, but looking back now, the mentality that I would have recommended to myself is not so much, I'll be so happy if they admit me and, I'll do whatever it takes to get accepted. But the right program is going to recognize how valuable I am, and that is available. And so just do the very best that you can with everything, the essays, the letters of rec, the exam, the interview. Just do your very best. And even if you don't get accepted, what you will get is feedback on all of those areas. They might say, you know what, your research was really interesting, but like you didn't provide enough information for us. We wanted to like follow your description, but it was too much. There was too much jargon. We weren't able to understand, or, you didn't even talk about what you would do after. And that's really important for our program. Any feedback that you get only strengthens your application next year. And it's not, it doesn't indicate anything about you as a student or how intelligent you are, how worthy you are if you don't get accepted. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this live stream, a lot of being accepted into a program doesn't have so much to do with you as the applicant, but has to do with the program and what they're looking for at the moment. And it could be that they're not looking for students in the research interest that you're interested in. They're looking for something else, and that's okay, because ideally you'll be accepted into a program that is looking for what you offer. So start staying patient and staying grounded, do the very, very best you can, and then make sure to take intentional breaks and step away. Step away from the essay, step away from the studying, and make sure that you're recuperating and you're resting well, and you're reminding yourself that the right program is out there for you and they will see you as a valuable applicant versus, feeling like you need to change yourself to be accepted into graduate school. So I hope that's helpful. All right. How would you recommend comparing PhD programs and their offerings, assistantships, etc.? I have a top school in mind already, but would like to add to my Plan B list. This is a cool question. How would you recommend comparing PhD programs and their offerings? So to clarify, PhD programs have different offerings for funding. So you might do an assistantship, a teaching assistantship, which means you're a TA to a professor, and then you get paid. You have like a pay period, and you get paid per month or per quarter, depending. That is how you pay for your life. They might have a research assistantship. So you're an assistant to, like a lab or a professor who's working to publish their book, things like that. So when you're comparing these things, unfortunately, a lot of this information is not transparent on the website. Like they don't say, hey, all our graduates have a TA-ship year 1 to 3, and then they have a research assistantship year 4 and 5, and then year 6, you're expected to fund yourself with external grants. That's just one example. They usually will not specify that on their website. In fact, I have found for me, in my experiences, it's hard to get that information until after you're admitted. And that's typically because even the program doesn't fully know what they have to offer until they know which students will be attending. So that being said, get as much information as you can from the program, from the graduate advisor, and if you can, speak to current graduate students and ask them. Reach out to them through a friendly formal email. Just say, hey, if you have a minute, I'd love to, either converse through email or chat over the phone, whatever. And I'd love to ask you some questions about like funding in the department and what it's been like. You'd be surprised to see how many graduate students would want to respond to you and let you know. I always respond to those emails, and I'm happy to just be very transparent because it's just one student helping out another student. But as far as adding to your Plan B, it depends what PhDs, I'm assuming it depends what PhDs, like what universities you're applying to, because usually within a university system, they're going to be pretty similar in similar departments. And then looking at like state schools, Ivy League schools, things like that, liberal arts schools, they differ a lot. And so you want to not make any assumptions about what they have to offer you. But again, unfortunately, know that these things usually do not become transparent until you've been accepted. As far as recommending like another way to compare PhD programs, because there's a lot to consider, is the faculty that's there. In my experience, mentorship is like the most valuable resource in graduate school. Truly, who you're working with, their willingness to advise you, connect you to other people, that's like everything. So if there are professors that you have already connected with or whose work you really love and you've heard good things about them as mentors, things like that, I would rank that quite high. Especially if there's like 3 or more professors in one program, that's really, really good, because it's ideal to have more than one professor that you're interested in working with per program. So I would definitely consider that as a huge component of, comparing programs. And then of course, funding is huge. So I hope that answers your question. There's just a lot to consider when comparing PhDs. And if I were you, I would make a list like of everything that is a pro for this program and a con, pro for this program and a con, and then really start to reflect for yourself, like, how important is that to me for the next 5 to 7 years? You know, and then that's how you'll really know. Oh my goodness. So we are already at time. It's been an hour and I have a few more questions. But I will say, I think that next week we will be doing the same thing. This was really great in the sense that we had so many questions and there's a bunch of you. So tune in next week for our Q&A. And if we do not do a Q&A webinar, because sometimes we have other topics, I will be doing weekly roundups on Discord. So look out for that. You will basically just drop your questions throughout the week. And then I will do like a video where I am answering. So just look out for that and check in with us next week. We always do live streams here. And even if we're covering a different topic, we still have a live Q&A of about 20 to 30 minutes. So any pressing questions you have, feel free to drop them in there, okay? It has been so great with meeting with you all and just being able to share what I know. And I hope it's been helpful. And I look out to Discord server link. Absolutely. Let me get that for you. Actually, I think I have a QR code for you. Sorry about that. Hang on, I'm still on right now. Sorry, everyone. I am picking it up right now. It's usually right on our website. My dog is being so silly. Well, she's not my dog, but she's my baby. Jeez. Actually, I wonder if I can get that Discord link straight from my Discord right now. Yes. Okay, I got the link, everyone. I'm about to post it in here. Okay. That is the Discord invite link. Yes, Emily, a decision matrix spreadsheet is your future. That is true. Okay. Great. Yeah, check us out on Discord. We have free server channels and you can, I'll be sure to confirm what webinar we're doing next week. And again, even if it's a topic, a selected topic, we do have live Q&A after. And we'll do weekly roundups too. So we'll be answering questions in like a video format. So hold on to those questions, join our Discord, and I'll be here next week. Bye, everyone.